Don't stop believing. Hold on to those draft picks. Trade ups didn't materialize. The Texans couldn't get a trade up done, so they got a trade back from number 25 with the New York Football Giants. Giants get a quarterback who's probably not going to be very good. The Texans get supreme control of rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. A trade back looked like it was going to be a more and more likely scenario for the Texans as player after player after player that fit for the Texans started to come off the board. Nick Caserio saying after the first round of this year's draft, tried to make moves, couldn't get people to make the trade, couldn't get people to move up. Let's talk about a variety of things. Let's first talk about the players that started to sneak off the board and where there might have been an opportunity for Nick Caserio to make a move. When you look at the board and how it shook out, we knew Kelvin Banks was a target for the Texans. He goes all the way up there at number 9. It became apparent over the past week or so Banks wasn't going to be there, but Tyler Booker had been mocked to the Texans a ton. And there was a lot of thought that the top guard in this class would slip down boards. In fact, he did not. He went much higher than most people expected. 13 is the highest I'd seen Booker, but he went 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. So there goes 2 big-time targets. Don't know they were ever in on Tyler Warren, but the Colts weren't moving off of that pick. So there goes Tyler Warren. Gray Zabel at 18. The Seattle Seahawks make the selection there. There goes a target. And Emeka Egbuka for the Buccaneers, there goes a target. And this is the portion of the evening where Nick Caserio felt like the trade back is going to start happening. That's when he said he's really started to think moving out of 25 was ultimately going to be what the Texans did. A couple of defenders come off the board. They probably weren't taking a running back that high. And then Matthew Golden, a target for a lot of people, went off the board at 23. The Texans, once Golden was on the board available for the Packers at 23, they couldn't pry him away from the Green Bay Packers. I didn't love the idea of Golden. I certainly understand why people did, but you weren't going to be able to pry him away from the Packers. The next pick, the Minnesota Vikings surprise anybody and everybody and stay and pick a player in Donovan Jackson. That feels like a pick with a team that doesn't have that many draft picks that they had some pretty good big conviction on. And then the Texans sitting there at 25 decide to move all the way out of the first round. My question to you would be, where did they miss in the potential to trade up? Like, none of these teams traded back. From when Tyler Booker went off the board with the Cowboys, none of these other teams moved back. Nick Caserio said he called. He tried to pry one of these picks away, to go out there and make a selection of a player that the Texans liked and valued in the first round. So where should they have made the trade? And should they just overpay for whatever they got? And that was not something that I was in favor of. I understood a move, say, to 15, 16, 17 for Kelvin Banks. But once Banks is off the board, Booker comes off the board early, what move up should they have made? I didn't see any scenario where they should have used their draft capital to move up for one of these players. They're not a Gray Zabel away. They're not a Donovan Jackson away. They're not an Emeka Egbuka away. The Houston Texans need lots of cost-controlled talent. And Nick Caserio has done well on day 2 going and finding those players. So that trade back from 25 allowed him to add some more day 2 capital. They get the Giants pick right there at 34. They also get the Giants pick at the back end of the 3rd round. They get a future 3rd round selection as well. And they've got a lot of draft capital to be moving around and getting exactly who they feel good about. And they can overpay without the overpay stinging and taking away your options to go out there and fill out some of the key spots on this roster. Yes, they still need offensive linemen. Yes, they still need wide receivers. Yes, they still need depth at various positions. Where were they supposed to get that once the guards and wide receivers had come off the board? Again, they tried to trade up. They could not find a partner. It takes 2 to tango. Should they have taken Josh Connerly at 25, who ultimately went to the Commanders a few picks later? Hell no. They should have taken Josh Connerly. Connerly's not that good. Connerly can't play guard, and Connerly wouldn't start at tackle for this team. So why would you take a player that can't help you in 2025? The Texans right now have 5 chances on day 2 to take players that can help them in 2025. Josh Connerly couldn't help them in 2025? Should they have taken Josh Simmons, the injured tackle from Ohio State that the Kansas City Chiefs ultimately took? Well, no. Two big things about Simmons that don't make any sense. His knee's messed up, coming off a serious knee injury, and he has off-the-field concerns. Concerns about how much he loves and dedicates to the world of football. That's a no-go for the Houston Texans. So they made the move back, and they got a lot in the move back. From the Jimmy Johnson trade, which was the first way people valued trades, to the most current of trade charts, the Houston Texans won that trade. They won that trade in the trade back. And I don't give a damn that the LA Rams got a first-round pick when they traded the pick right after them. It's pretty clear what happened with the LA Rams situation. The Texans had already made their trade. The Rams were on the clock. And the Falcons come and have to overpay to pry the Rams off of that pick. And the Rams say, okay, thanks. It's not like Nick Caserio sent up a signal flare and said, hey, everybody give me your best offer. I'm getting ready to make a trade. It's clear that the Falcons went up and pried the pick away from the Rams. By the way, they massively overpaid for a highly questionable defensive end. The Falcons being a bad organization doesn't make the Houston Texans trade with the New York Giants a bad trade, okay? It just makes the Falcons a bad organization. And the Texans have to go out there, use those picks, and hit on those picks. They've got the top part of the second round to themselves. The Cleveland Browns will make a selection, and then the Texans are on the clock. There's a variety of different ways they can go. And the needs are all still present. Guess what's available? Offensive linemen, running backs, wide receivers, depth pieces on defense. All of those things are still available. If you'll remember, lots of people talked about how this draft, basically from 15 to 45, all those players were pretty well grouped together and grouped with each other in when you're thinking about stacking them on boards and grading what they can be. Now, obviously, some players are going to end up being better than others out of the first round. There's going to be some second round players that end up being better than first rounders. Think about Kamari Lassiter, how good he was at cornerback. He was the second best rookie cornerback in football last year behind Quinyon Mitchell. He was better than some first-round cornerbacks that went off the board. Terrion Arnold in Detroit. He's better than Nate Wiggins, went off the board in Baltimore in the first round. It's not impossible to have a player be a second-round pick and be better than somebody who plays that position in the first round. And again, there are options. The Texans have the ability to go get a guard at 34. If you're just wanting to just take an offensive lineman, throw a pick, add a body, add them to the room. Great. Draft Tate Ratledge from Georgia. He started for 3 years for the Bulldogs. He was a captain. He played right guard. He's super athletic. The only real concern is some fine-tuning on the technique and injury history. Take him. And the injury history, it's a minute injury history. It's not like Josh Simmons where he's got a giant knee injury that nobody knows if he's going to be athletic again when he heals up from the injury. You want a running back? Boom. Trey Henderson or Quinshawn Judkins, the Ohio State duo. You want a wide receiver? Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. There's plenty of options for the Houston Texans. They did not eliminate any significant option from the trade back. At 25, roughly the same players that they should have taken at 25 will be available at 34. And they have extra draft capital now. So at 58, if they identify somebody, Nick Caserio can get on the phone again, and he can try to make another trade. And if they identify somebody after that, he can get on the phone again, and they've got 79, 89, 99. They've got 2 seconds next year. They got 2/3 next year. They got 2/4 next year. If he wants to slightly overpay, which is, I don't know exactly what the Giants did when they traded up. If Nick Caserio wants to slightly overpay to go and get something done on day 2 of the draft, he's got the ability. Again, this is a guy that smashed it on day 2 last year. Smashed it on day 2. Now he's got 5 chances on day 2. That's if they stick and pick with those. But 34, 58, 79, 89, 99, he's got 5 chances. If he hits on 4 of those, that's even better than last year when he hit on 3 of them. And you could say Blake Fisher's a hit or a miss. He ended up being a starting player for the team. And obviously, Kalen Bullock and Kamari Lassiter were really good players. Hell, if he finds 3 significant starters, That's better than what he did last year, which was a really impressive day 2 of the NFL draft. He's got opportunities. It's so quick to forget how well he has done in the second round, how many different players he's found that have immediately played significant roles for the Houston Texans on day 2, rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL draft. He's got to do it again. He's got to pick the players. They've got to be useful players in 2025. And he didn't seem that there was a useful player at 25 for 2025. So now he's picking at 34 and 99 and 79 and 89 and 58 for 2025. And if he goes and hits those, the Texans will be on their way to trying to go where they've never gone before and having a good opportunity to do that. I know it looks like a lot of the offensive linemen came off the board. There's still other offensive linemen left. And it's worth noting, something we've talked about before, the Patriots coaching staff, where Nick Caley was the tight ends coach and Cole Popovich was an offensive line coach, they coached up a lot of mid to late round picks on the offensive line. They coached up Ted Karras, who was a 6th round pick. They coached up David Andrews, who was an undrafted free agent. They coached up Shaq Mason, who was a 4th round pick. They coached up Marcus Cannon, who was a 6th round pick. They coached up, the name is escaping me, Joe Thuney, who was a 3rd round pick. They coached up non-first round offensive linemen and turned them into suitable offensive linemen. And they even made investments in those mid-round offensive linemen when they had Tom Brady at quarterback. And Patriots fans were screaming, you got to protect Tom Brady. Just like Texans fans scream, you got to protect C.J. Stroud. Part of the improvement for this team is about the coaching staff. The 2 new elements that the Texans haven't had when they've had a crappy offensive line for the past 2 years. They're going to say Cole Popovich was on the staff. He wasn't calling the shots. But Nick Caley's coaching scheme, or Nick Caley's offensive scheme, Cole Popovich's coaching as the guy in the offensive line room, they've got to make the players that were here better. They've got to improve the free agents they brought in, and they've got to have the young guys, which I believe plural. They'll bring in multiple offensive linemen before all is said and done. They got to have those young guys ready to go. That's part of their plan. That's been part of their plan since they hired Nick Caley and promoted Cole Popovich, and then went out there and signed 2 free agents who've played a tremendous amount of football and traded for one that they're hoping fits better in the scheme that they're going to run than what he ran in Minnesota. And their hope is that this coaching staff that they believe in is going to go out there, and the rookies that they get, have them ready to play and attack things for 2025. I loved the trade. I love the trade back. It makes day 2 of the NFL draft an incredibly important one for the Houston Texans. They've got to hit the picks. They don't hit the picks, we'll all be looking around saying, oh, well, they moved back and a lot of good it did them. Okay. And if they don't hit the picks, yeah, it'll suck. When you don't hit picks in a draft, it's not good. Nick Caserio hits 3 out of 5. The Texans will be in a great spot. He hits 4 out of 5. They'll be in an even better spot than we could have imagined. If all 5 of those guys turn into contributors in 2025 in some way, shape, or form, it's a damn good job by Nick Caserio. That is if he makes all 5 picks, because he's got the ability to move around. What say you? You like the trade? Did you understand it? Did you really want one of those guys that I down talked and I didn't like and I didn't want the Texans to draft? Let me know in the comment section down below. I don't want to hear a damn thing about the Atlanta Falcons and what they gave up. Again, the Falcons being a bad organization doesn't make the Texans trade a bad trade. Okay? That's just not what happens. That is not how things work when you're analyzing things. All right? That is not it. I'm not going to listen to that. You want to say it? That's fine. I'll read it and I'll respond to you in the comment section. But I have no use for it. The Falcons getting fleeced in that trade, that doesn't matter to me. The Texans didn't own the 26th pick. They owned the 25th pick, and then they traded it. And then somebody else made a bad trade, and the Texans get criticized for it. They didn't get enough. They won on every trade chart, and now they've got to go out there and win with the picks that they actually go out there and make. I believe they can do that. And I like a lot of the players, and we'll have a bountiful list of players and maybe a mock draft headed your way before round 2 starts. So be on the lookout for that. Appreciate you watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And I can't wait until we talk about round 2 and round 3 of the NFL draft again soon.